Hey guys, Jim Vanosky with Manufacturing Talks. Okay, time once again for our business advisor gurus from Aprio down in Atlanta. Simeon Wallis and Adam Beckerman, they are here once again to tell us what's going on with the economy, what that means for manufacturers, how folks in manufacturing are feeling now, and how we in industry can position ourselves for success in the future. These guys always have great insights. They're going to be with us in just a few seconds. So please stay tuned here on Manufacturing Talks.
Welcome to Manufacturing Talks with Jim Vanosky. Industry has a million cool stories, and Jim talks to the movers and shakers who are making them happen. Let's dive in.
Hey everybody, Jim Vanosky with Manufacturing Talks. Welcome back. I'm joined once again by the guys from Aprio, Simeon Wallis and Adam Beckerman. Welcome, fellas.
Thank you.
Hey, Jim. Thank you.
Good to have you guys again. Always intriguing discussions about what's going on in the economic world. So, people who've seen you before kind of know you, but let me kick it over to you guys just to talk a little bit about yourselves and Aprio. We'll start with you, Adam.
Sure, Jim, and good to see you again. And we very much appreciate you including us in this podcast. So thank you very much. I'm Adam Beckerman. I lead the manufacturing practice for Aprio. I've been in this role a little bit over 14 years now. And, as a firm, we've had this segment for 30 plus years. But as I look at the practice over the 30 years, we have intentionally, driven it towards a different way, right? So when you think about a public accounting firm, I know a lot of people, the first thing that's going to pop in their head is taxes, right? Taxes audit. And we do that really well. And it's a big part of our business. But, we've done it differently. And through the years, we've created a segment that is a true partner to the industry. Just as an example, about 13 years ago, we found a not-for-profit group called Next Generation Manufacturing. And that really was born from conversations with our clients where we were hearing from them at that point, in the state of Georgia, that they really didn't have a place to, meet their peers, learn best practices, visit other facilities. And so we created this not-for-profit organization. The first year we had an annual event. I think we had about 70 people that showed up. Fast forward to now, our annual event, which is actually on October 10th, we'll have close to 300 people. We do tours of manufacturing facilities. We have every 6 to 8 weeks tours of manufacturing facilities. We have CEO, CFO roundtables. Every year we have a women's symposium, Women in Manufacturing. So it's things like that we look beyond just the debits and credits and how we can really partner with our industry and help them grow, and not just in the state of Georgia, but all of our country and all our different regions that we serve.
Yeah, that's really cool. And a lot of places don't have anything like that. So
yeah,
folks down there who have it.
Looking, so today we have it in the state of Georgia. We're going to start it in North Carolina, and over time we're going to look to bring it to all our other regions.
Wonderful. Good news. How about you, Simeon?
Sure. So my name is Simeon Wallis. I'm Aprio's Chief Investment Officer for our wealth management business and our family office business. Additionally, I serve as the firm's chief economist, since we spend a lot of our day looking at what's going on in the economy and the capital markets. Within Aprio, we have, as Adam alluded to, a strong background in manufacturing and distribution. That aligns well with my background. Prior to taking on this role, I spent about 2 decades on Wall Street. A lot of my time was in an analyst covering several aspects within the manufacturing and distribution sectors, including auto, aerospace and defense, transportation, logistics, and the like. So I have a love of doing plant tours. I have a love of talking manufacturing. And when we thought about how we can help a lot of the clients of the firm, even outside of wealth management and family office, the information that we capture on a day-to-day basis, we use to then speak to the clients of the firm, really the small and medium-sized businesses, and take a lot of what's kind of the big picture Wall Street and make it very actionable for those of us who are actually living on Main Street. And that's really where we've been able to find a strong niche and a lot of feedback from clients that we're able to help them think through the business challenges of the day.
As Simeon mentioned about the plant tours and his background in manufacturing, I was the exact opposite. I had no experience in manufacturing, but when I was a young accountant, I got to go to a manufacturing floor, and they were making ketchup bottles. And it started out in these test tubes, and I could watch them just blowing it up like that very quick. And I sat there for about 10 to 15 minutes, and I said, that's who I want to work with. That is really cool
Very
stuff.
cool.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, I don't know if you guys saw it. I just announced last week as part of this show, we're going to establish a new segment that's kind of a takeoff on the old How It's Made shows. And
Oh,
I'm going to
great.
go out and video manufacturing processes and have them on as separate segments.
That's great. I'd love to have some of our clients on that.
Yeah, let them know. I'm definitely
Yeah.
willing to hit the road and pick up things farther afield than Michigan for sure.
Absolutely.
Well, let's jump into the meat of the topic. What's going on in manufacturing? First of all, I think let's start with the 10,000 foot level, the overall economy. What are you guys seeing as far as how the economy is doing these days? And what are you hearing out there with people's sentiments? Start with you, Simeon.
Sure. What's going on with the economy is that it is better than what people would have thought at this point in time, given what we anticipated happening over the last few years. So we most recently had GDP numbers that were revised higher to 3%. The expectation is that that will decline as we move into the third and fourth quarter, but still be at what we would think of as a relatively healthy growth rate, 2%, give or take a 0.5% on either side. So big picture, the economy is healthier than what many of us anticipated. One of the keys to realize, though, is that it's not uniform. There are parts of the economy that are definitely performing better than others. When we think about the consumer represents roughly 70% of GDP. And we see a bifurcation there where the consumer that's at the lower income end is definitely stressed, more challenged. We see it in things through credit card delinquencies.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, consumers who are, call it more medium income or upper income, are changing their patterns and where they're becoming more value oriented in their purchases. So Walmart, for example, on its most recent earnings call, noted that it's the over $100,000 shoppers for them, those with incomes over $100,000, that are primarily leading their growth. It's not what we think of as the typical Walmart shopper. So that's going on with the consumer economy. Ultimately, a lot of what's manufactured flows into that. And so understanding where a manufacturer's products end up and who that customer base is, critically important. The other side of this is that we're seeing the manufacturing sector and the goods economy still struggling relative to where we would have thought it would be, while the services economy has been more resilient in many ways as well. So on the services side, you hear things like cruise ships are having their best year ever, and they anticipate 2025 to be even stronger than 2024. At the same time, you're hearing about things like a little bit of layoffs or weaker employment on the manufacturing side as manufacturers really think about what supply and demand looks like moving forward, which is more challenged than I think we all would have anticipated.
Yeah.
Simeon and I were talking earlier today, and I said to him, I've been meeting with some clients. I was actually with one yesterday, private equity group that has about 7 or 8 portfolios. And I asked that question, what's going on with your portfolio companies? And she said to me, orders are slow. And my next question to her was, why? What are you guys seeing? And she really didn't have an answer. And she said, I don't know. And so it's interesting that you see some of these companies that they've got this slowdown and are trying to understand what it is that's causing it. And as Simeon said, some of the economic indicators are good, some of them are not so good. Is it the election? Is it a pull forward of things post COVID that are slowing these orders down? But there definitely is. I think manufacturers are feeling it. I don't think it's at the point where alarm bells are going off, but certainly there is a bit of a slowdown that we're starting to see. But the other thing too is, what I'd said to Simeon is not seeing any significant layoffs associated with that slowdown as of yet, and hopefully that continues.
If we drill into the manufacturing sector kind of economically and mood wise, you guys have been pretty bullish the past few times we've talked, and there's certainly some of that has held true, but I think now we are seeing some of the indicators also kind of backing up that sentiment that you get out there. What are you seeing with that, Simeon?
Yes. So I think there are a few things that are important to consider when we're thinking specifically about the manufacturing sector that are really impacting it. The first is going back to the pandemic, we had supply chains that were discombobulated and really impacted by a number of different reasons that we all know. And it's taken years and years to try and get the supply chain to normalize where we have the right amount of supply to meet the right level of demand. And really over the last 18 months, what we've seen is that where we had a lack of inventory, we have now really rebuilt those inventory stock levels for the most part back to where they need to be. And part of what was actually keeping the manufacturing economy stronger than end market demand was this refilling of the supply chain. It's not 100% there, but we're much closer to being normal than where we were before. So that was part of it, that we had the benefit of restocking. I would add to it, and where we are today, why we are seeing some of the slowdown is that it's been about 2 years since the Fed started moving interest rates up, and it moved up very significantly in a short period of time. But there's not a correlation that's very tight between when rates go up and when demand ends up slowing down. You typically have a lag effect, and you can hear numbers from anywhere between 6 months to 18 months to 2 years. Where we are is that for a lot of the goods that need to be financed, whether they're purchased by consumers like you and me or companies, that has really started to slow as interest rates have been higher for longer. So outside of the areas that Washington has really been helping to stimulate, if just the bread and butter economy for products that get financed, we are seeing those slowdowns. Autos would be a great example of that. And that's really starting to play through in the manufacturing sector as well. And we see it where for the goods that don't need to be financed, we're seeing much more consistent demand there. So we are seeing that interest rate impact. To be on the positive side, obviously the Fed just lowered interest rates by 0.5%. So this is the start of the decline. So we would expect that things would likely get better as we look out over the next, call it between probably 12 and 24 months out. It won't happen starting tomorrow. So that's one of the positives. Additionally, as we think about what the impact is, we do think that you have a lag in stimulating demand, because for anyone who needs to finance something now, or any company that would need to finance, well, they're likely to be a little bit slower in making that procurement or that purchase, because they're going to wait for rates to continue to come down. Now that we've seen it start, why do it right now when you might wait, call it 2 quarters or 3 quarters, and you might get another 0.5% lower interest rate on what you do. So there's this perverse impact of lowering rates where it actually slows things down for a period of time before we actually see that coming into play. So that's part of the reason why we would be more cautious today as we look out over the next quarter or two. And in addition to the election, and the election does create some uncertainty because of tax policies and the like when we're all planning for additional purchases. So we're likely to continue to have a bit of a hiccup because of the election, as well as the early years or the early part of lowering interest rates.
And so, Simeon, on the interest rates, what do you see as the time frame where maybe that starts to turn a bit?
Yeah. So the way we're thinking about it and our own projections is that we're likely to get 0.25 point reductions for the 2 remaining Fed meetings this year. So November and December, we believe we're likely to get 0.25 point. And then we think over the following 3 meetings, we're likely to get 2 more 0.25 point reductions. So it won't be every meeting, but we're likely to have this step process down. And we think the Fed has roughly 4 to 6 of these 0.25 point reductions. So think about 1 to 1.5%, to where they feel that rates are going to be in a more normal environment, and then they'll see how the economy is doing from there.
One thing I've noted in the past is you two tend to be more bullish than what I see in the Institute for Supply Managers monthly survey, and that remains kind of in the doldrums. I think it's had 1 positive month in the last couple of years. Adam, when you talk to folks out there, your clients, how are they kind of feeling against that sentiment indicator, and where do you see them thinking as we look forward, maybe for like the next quarter?
Yeah, I think I have the benefit of meeting with actual companies on a regular basis, so I do think get it. The data is the data, right? And that's what the ISM is saying. But as I'm out there, talking to clients and looking at their financials, I have not seen a significant contraction, right? No, it's not like it was back in, 21, 22. Things, as I said to you before, things are slowing down, orders are slowing down, but I think people are still generally bullish, but they are a bit apprehensive and are going to be cautious. I think, again, what Simeon's talking about, the interest rates, absolutely, the election. And I think that, as those things start to kind of come clearer in picture, hopefully we'll start to see a little bit more, more activity. But yeah, I mean, overall, as I look at my client base, they tend to still be doing well.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would add to it, Jim, a few things. So when we look at ISM, you have the headline number, which absolutely has been below 50 for, I think it's like 22 out of 23 months. And then you start looking at some of the categories underneath. And we focus on looking at what we think are the more leading categories, such as new orders. And we compare that to inventory. So you're taking the difference between new orders and inventories, and is that going to be positive or negative? And when it's a positive number, it has historically been a leading indicator to where ISM is headed. And what we saw was that for a period of time, it was getting less negative, and we saw ISM start to improve. And then it was positive, but it started to become less positive. And we've seen ISM basically plateau or weaken a little bit. But ISM is getting less negative over these last few months, marginally, which is a positive directionally, even though we're living in this land of negative. The other thing I would highlight, and it's not just ISM, it's other surveys that are done out there. We're seeing this feelings versus hard data difference, where the feeling, the sentiment, whether it's related to business sentiment or personal or consumer sentiment, over the last few years, it's just been more negative than it has traditionally been.
The economy overall.
The economy overall, yeah.
Yeah.
And at the same time, the actual economic data that comes in after the fact has skewed a little bit better than where everybody would have anticipated. And so we've had this weird difference between kind of the feelings of the moment and what the actual experience of the moment has been. And so the manufacturing sector on the ISM number, it's clearly been negative, and yet a lot of the economic data has actually been more modest than that.
That's a great summarization of what the question that Jim had asked me between the ISM and my clients. Exactly what you just said, Simeon.
As a guy who spent his whole career in manufacturing, I can say with all, positivity around the state of affairs, things are certainly not horrible. At the same time, I know manufacturers do not like drama. We do not like, big uncertainties and big disruptions. Simeon, you talked about, it was a major hangover both ways, really, for coming out of COVID. You did have those companies where things went south, and then, they kind of pared back and had to rebuild, and there were some positives there. You had companies like bicycles, which is, my pastime, that went crazy during COVID. Really, all outdoors entertainment stuff did. Inventories went through the roof because you couldn't get enough of anything. And then the inevitable slowdown came in the last year and a half, and now people are sitting on huge inventories. And so it seems to me that there are more of those kinds of disruptions. So that happened in the last 2 to 3 years. And now we've had, strikes and natural disasters and just a lot of drama that upsets people in my world. Are you guys getting a sense for that?
Short answer is yes. So we've had parts of the economy where you had a boom and then a bust, and we're kind of how close are we back to just normalized times? We've seen the opposite, where in the more services world, we had a bust and then we had a boom, and now things are normalizing more in the services. If you look at what's going on with airlines, they're starting to cut capacity after things looked really good. So part of this is just, look, we went through something that none of us had experienced previously, and we're trying to get back to normal. And here we are 4 years later, we're not quite there yet, but we're a lot closer today than where we were 6 months or 12 months ago.
Yeah. I also think it's, Jim, going back to what you said about some companies did really well and some companies, didn't fare as well. And so I think it's a lot on experiences. I have one client who is a rug distributor, high-end rugs, interior designers. They were gangbusters. I mean, they had the best years they've ever had, right? So now things are slowing down a little bit for them. So their kind of perception of the last couple of years is completely different than some of those companies that struggled so mightily, during COVID and right after, that are, kind of ticking back up. So I think that plays a bit into, kind of how people see, some of these other things that are going on, these world things that are happening.
And I would add to some of the uncertainty that I think we all experience. And if you're running a manufacturing company, it's also a big challenge is what's going on with China. China's economy has been extremely weak. That's impacted manufacturing in two ways. The first is we're hearing a lot of stories about competing with Chinese-based manufacturers who are being exceedingly aggressive on price, both in North America as well as in Europe, because they're trying to export their way out of their self-inflicted economic issues. On top of that, you have migrating supply chains, right? So supply chains are moving out of China for security reasons, and they're migrating, whether it's to India and Southeast Asia, or coming closer, whether it's nearshoring and putting manufacturing back here in the US or in Mexico or in other friendly countries, right? So you have this changing dynamic, which makes it difficult to manage through. And then you layer on top of that the geopolitics of the Middle East and what potentially can happen both with energy prices, but also the logistics. So in the sense of, container ships now have to go around Africa, where before they would cut through the Red Sea. And that adds both scarcity to the number of ships that are out there and pricing as well. So there's just more going on. And then kind of the icing on the cake is that everything on social media seems to make everything happen so much sooner, and we all feel it that much sooner too.
Yeah, although at the same time, then we forget it a lot faster. I mean, you just brought up the troubles in the Middle East. It's like there's a new thing every week, and we forget the bottleneck in the Suez Canal and crazy stuff like that. It just seems like a distant memory now. Let's put on, or let's look into the crystal ball now. If we look, say, the next 6 months to a year, what are we thinking? Are things going to get better, get worse, stay the same? Where do you see things going?
I'm gonna answer this in a way that'll hedge my bets a little bit.
Fair enough.
So I'm pretty confident we're going to get resolution on what the election will be over the next 6 months. I'm not 100% confident, but I'm pretty confident in that. I will say I don't think it's going to get resolved the first or second.
I like how you said the next 6 months.
Yes.
Oh boy.
So we do have the election uncertainty that will hopefully be resolved. That will lead to things like better tax policy. We'll know from a trade perspective how things will go, and things like tariffs and the like, which are pretty big issues right now. And then on top of that, we'll have a better sense also of what the Fed's pace of rate reductions will be as well. So two of those big overhangs that we just referenced earlier, I think we'll have more clarity on. When it comes to the actual manufacturing sector and what's going on, and still unsure of how quickly some of the overhang that we have had due to higher interest rates get worked out. So I don't foresee all of us necessarily in December or January going out there and buying new vehicles. We'll see how that plays out. Another big piece of the pie here is how quickly mortgage rates do come down and we start getting more foot traffic into residential housing. Because if you think about how much activity occurs within the first 6 months of someone owning a new home, or within the 6 months before someone sells a new home, that tends to have a pretty big impact on building materials and the whole distribution chain associated with that. And it'll take, as rates come down, that'll get better, but it does take some time foot traffic wise and mortgage transactions to occur there. So I think that's a big one that maybe people may not be spending as much time on. That's worth thinking about. And so the normalization process and kind of putting this together over the next 6 months, we think things are on the margin going to get a little bit better, but by no means do we feel like it's going to be the best of times. It'll take us a while to get there.
Adam, anything to add?
No, I think Simeon is the expert future predictor, and I'll leave it with him.
Well, but you're the guy in the street, so I'm going to throw this question to you. What should those individual manufacturers be focused on to get the most out of the coming Simeon predicted positivity?
I think it's a great question, and the conversations that we're having with our clients is, as things are a little bit slower now, a little bit calmer now, take the time to take a look at your production, right? Your operations, and look for ways to become more efficient. We see with a lot of these middle market manufacturers, from a digital transformation perspective, they're not very good. And so this is a great time to really start to dig down into the operations and the related technology that surrounds that, and take a look and see how you can start producing better, cheaper. Because as we know, as technology continues to advance, it is going to become more difficult to compete. And if you're not one of those companies that's investing in the technology and the processes, it's going to be challenging, down the road. And so as things are maybe a little bit slower and you're not running, 24-hour shifts and having people work overtime, start to take a look at these areas where you can really kind of, get the company to the next generation.
Yeah, I would add to what Adam said. Adam's absolutely right. It's thinking about how do we get more productivity right now through our processes. One, I hate to kind of go into this because I think it's very in vogue, but thinking about how artificial intelligence can be, how we can all get up that learning curve a little bit faster and deploy that within our companies is a big one. I'll give an example of this is not a manufacturing company, but in a biotech company that we were doing some work on and researching. They talked about taking a process that typically took 16 hours. It's a lot of compute that goes into it and modeling and analytics. And with AI, they got it down to 5 minutes. And if you think about, there are probably lots of different little processes within a company where if you can make 50 to 80% reductions in lead times and work time, that can end up adding up on the bottom line, especially as we come out of this.
Yep. Yeah, makes sense, fellas.
Okay,
final thoughts.
Yeah,
I was just going to add something to what.
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
Sorry about that. When we are talking with our clients and we bring these types of stuff up, it's always about bandwidth, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't have the bandwidth to do these types of things. And so just again, reiterating that as things are maybe a little bit slower, this is the time to take advantage. I mean, his example of taking something from 15 hours to an hour, whatever he said, is absolutely amazing. And that's where these companies need to go and start to get a little more squeeze out of it. Yeah, makes sense.
Any last thoughts from you, Simeon?
Well, just to be kind of conservative in thinking about business operations right now, we are likely to see things be kind of a little bit of growth in the economy. So it's by no means are we forecasting 2008, 2009, 2010, but to just also be prepared. If we do get some sort of hiccup along the way, if there's some exogenous event, that can really affect things. Otherwise, we just have some uncertainty over the next quarter or two that can be worked through, and to be patient and to take the steps that Adam alluded to.
See, he's the economist, right? He's the data. I'm going to continue to be the cheerleader for these manufacturing companies and say, we can do it, we're going to do it, and we're going to continue to grow.
Excellent. Well, fellas, as always, very educational. I appreciate you being here today.
Our pleasure. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Appreciate you having us.
Yep. And as always, thanks to those of you in the audience. You are why we're here. Now we're here every Tuesday and most Thursdays as well. So tune in on those days. We'll have new shows for you. Can't promise they're all going to be as educational as what Adam and Simeon brought us today, but they're all going to be at least a little educational. So with that, Jim Vinosky from Manufacturing Talks signing off. So long.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for tuning in to Manufacturing Talks with Jim Vinosky. Watch for new episodes dropping every Tuesday. And don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe.